Welcome back. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the Max Payne series and how its gameplay has evolved and changed. As much as I'd love to play an entire movie trailer with no comment for the second time, I think I'll just remind you that the Mark Wahlberg movie does indeed exist. Oh no, and we'll get right to it. Max Payne released in 2001 and did gangbusters off the back of the release of The Matrix in 1999. It was the first game to do bullet time slow-mo, and therefore the first game to actually model and render bullets as they flew instead of just using hitscan, although I don't think hitscan had a name back then. Max Payne is a simple, humble video game, in the complexity sense at least, definitely not in terms of difficulty, god no. If it were a movie, Max Payne would be received like maybe John Wick. Every critic and his mother would have said it knows what it is. It's a no-frills, run-and-gun shooter with one original gameplay mechanic. Goes for Max Payne 2 as well. In Max Payne, you shoot the dudes and they shoot back at you. You've got two little tricks up your sleeve and that's it. The only thing separating Max Payne from the enemies are his abilities to shoot dodge, go into slow-mo while diving out of the way of bullets, and slow the flow of gameplay without doing the dodge, your dime store slow-mo. Since this is a game from the early 2000s, there's no cover system apart from your own choice to position Max behind a wall, and it's hard as fucking nails. I'm gonna make the entirely unreasonable assumption that everyone knows how a third-person shooter plays, so if you don't, I discuss it for a good half an hour in the Uncharted video. What I want to focus on here is how Max Payne's small pool of mechanics managed to stay interesting for its 8-hour runtime. We're going to have a look at how the slow-mo mechanics weave in and out of the gameplay, so let's start with the shoot dodge. It's my belief that the shoot dodge is so compelling, so satisfying every single time you use it, because of the perceived complexity of pulling it off, both within the game and in the player's control of it. When falling in a shoot dodge, Max's aim is constantly moving on its own, because Max himself is. This is basically equivalent to firing while moving in any other first or third person shooter. Your reticle is moving as you use the movement control, and you're having to compensate for that when moving it with the aiming control as well. Firing like this, as opposed to standing still, results in twitchier gunplay, because when you have your aim in the right spot, you know it's going to move on if you don't fire very soon. All the shoot dodge does is give this specific situation a hell of a lot of visual style, and adds the advantages that you're much less likely to be hit and more likely to be able to line up a shot while in slow-mo, because the enemies are moving slower. That's all there is to it, seriously. If you've played the game, hopefully you'll understand what I mean when I say there seems like there should be more to deconstruct, because you'll do it hundreds of times throughout a playthrough and it'll feel awesome every time. The shoot dodge is, at this point, a legendary example of simplicity with style in a video game. It also comes packaged with a memorable example of a gameplay tweak I didn't know I needed, but now I can't live without. In Max Payne 2, The Fall of 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 Max Payne 2, The Fall... Max won't stand up after a dodge until you finish firing, and in 3 he won't stand until you press a direction. This is hugely helpful for when you make a dodge but haven't killed everyone in the room by the end of it and are getting shot to bits while Max takes his sweet ass time to stand up. I can't think of a more obvious mod for the first game, so I hope that exists somewhere. Of course, the game isn't just a third-person shooter with a slow-mo dodge tacked on. Bullets have an uncommonly slow travel speed even outside of slow-mo, so guns can feel like they have a massive spread and terrible accuracy if you're used to modern shooters. They definitely do, I'm not debating that, but contributing to this is that bullets travel so slowly that you actually need to lead your shots a little, even when you're in normal speed time, which in turn means enemies can actually have moved out of the way of your shots by the time the bullet reaches them if you aim directly at them. See how long these bullets take to hit the wall? In a modern shooter, those bullet holes would be there in the very next frame. It's hard to tell if the widespread is supposed to feel inaccurate or generous. One way or the other, Max doesn't always need to have the aiming dot right on an enemy to hit them. With third-person shooting being very new, this could have been meant as an allowance for players unfamiliar with the mouse controls, but with so many games to compare it to with the benefit of hindsight today, the game can just feel frustrating because your aim can be perfect and you can still miss, or your aim can be awful and you can still land a hit. On that note, Max Payne was one of the very first successful attempts at a 3D third-person shooter with mouse and keyboard control. When the game started development, there wouldn't have been many examples of this genre for the developers to work from. I think it's pretty cool then that the game managed to have a unique gimmick, while also being fairly unique at the time just for being a third-person shooter at all. A fair few cover-based shooters today don't even bother trying anything original. They could have learned something here. The use of Slowmo outside of shoot dodges is pretty self-explanatory. The game slows down and you have more reaction time to everything going on. Since bullets are now visible, avoidable projectiles, they can now be dodged by moving, like, say, a fireball in Doom, but a little faster. On a deconstruction level, that's all there is to it, so why is it that these simple Slowmo implementations make Max Payne so compelling for the length of 2 whole games? I think giving the player these 2 additional moves on top of a typical shooter moveset is so fantastic because they add an infinite amount of possible approaches to every gunfight, on top of what already exists in the level design and base mechanics. Died here? Maybe don't shoot dodge right into the middle of a circle of enemies, you fucking... Getting shot to bits over here? Slow time and run to another piece of cover. That didn't work? Maybe shoot dodge right at the enemies next time. It's a weird one, but the best analogy I can come up with is this. If the level design and basic shooting mechanics are one set of technically infinite possibilities with each attempt and retry, then the Slowmo mechanics add another infinity on top of that. Since shooting and movement interact with and are integral to the shoot dodge and Slowmo, the possibilities multiply and you get double infinity. Hey, the Slowmo in Max Payne is everything I would strive for as a developer, an elegant combination of mechanics which interact and weave in and out of each other to add complexity and possibilities to the game. Max Payne might not be as simple as you thought. It sure as shit isn't in terms of difficulty. I find it hard to judge a game that has instant quick saves and quick loads on difficulty though. It's a bit lazy but acceptable if you look at it as though you're supposed to save after every isolated gunfight, which these games signal quite elegantly with a slow-mo shot of the last enemy's death. But I'd take a hard line and say the game is simply too bloody hard on console where you could only save after each subchapter. If you've played a handful of PC shooters from between 1999 and 2002, you'll know they were this specific brand of hard, maybe unfair, that's hard to describe. GTA 3 is another example. For anyone who's not played any shooters from that era, it's partially down to a lot of enemies rushing the player and shooting from lots of different angles and doing a bunch of damage and then the player being sent back pretty far if you haven't saved. But it's exacerbated with enemies hidden around blind corners, which suggests an expectation that the player is meant to do some memorization and isn't really meant to beat a lot of the later sections on their first try. I mean, look at this shit. Unreasonable. With no forewarning, some of these enemy spawn points require, funnily enough, Neo-level reaction times for any first-time player to not take a shotgun blast to Max's constipated face. It's another can of worms entirely, but the game design community seems to have agreed in the last 15 years that trial and error is only acceptable if there's still a believable chance a section can be beaten on the first try. In Max Payne 1, I'd say there are a few dozen examples of pieces of design that do not feel beatable without foreknowledge and are unfair to a new player. Fair enough? For a bit more on this, I highly recommend checking out Racervac's video on the game. It's also worth saying that Max Payne 2 is better in the fairness regard, and if anything can become too easy at times with its new slow-mo system, where Max speeds up and the enemies slow down more and more as he kills more people. The advantage becomes ridiculous at times. However, it's been made harder to tell when an enemy has been killed in 2. In the first game they were flung backwards exaggeratedly and let out a distinctive scream. Max Payne 2, the Road Warrior, implemented a fancy new physics engine for the first time, so now enemies just crumple realistically. I'd call this a pretty inarguable example of how technology can improve, but a simpler solution would have remained the best choice. If there's anything else to these games worth talking about, I guess they have those shitty early shooter platforming sections which just amount to maneuvering a character designed for shooting over a gap on a beam barely wide enough for their hitbox. It looked and felt stupid then, and it looks and feels stupid now. The game also has spots where it isn't 100% clear where you need to go next, and sometimes it'll randomly expect you to backtrack despite how intensely linear it is. Nothing to say really, except that it's always infuriating to hit a dead end and have to sweep back through where you've already been. The game could have at least put a couple packs of painkillers in the dead ends to ease the frustration. Max Payne The Two Towers is again much better here, although it does bugger around with its own handful of what were they thinking ideas like an escort mission. It also has more than a couple of forced walking sections in their infancy. You can take them at your own pace, but they have to be played out before you get back to the shooting. Though at least one of them is pretty clever about it by having you shoot your way back out. Max Payne 1 and 2 were fucking stunning to me when I first played them, but so were, like, I don't know, Sonic Adventure and, Jack 2. And we know what I think of that today. I think it's just really cool that these two games are still, for the most part, awesome today, despite my more recent critical eye, which sees how repetitive and simple they should feel by rights. For real, there aren't many better examples of simple, satisfying elegance in any medium, let alone just games. Elegant is perhaps not the word other design boys have used to describe Max Payne 3, and I'll allow you all the criticism of the story you care to give, but I think its gameplay's gotten a bad rap for daring to include a cover system. The old Max Payne mechanics are all present and correct, so cover is an addition on top of that. Except of course, it isn't just an addition, because the cover system meant changes to the way enemies move and interact with the player too. Max moves slower and is encouraged to spend plenty of time in cover. Max Payne 3 isn't a pushover in terms of difficulty either, but this time it means you can't go running circles around enemies without being guaranteed a quick death, unless you've got enough Slowmo in reserve. Again, I'm not going over the basics of a modern third-person shooter, so let's move right on to how Max Payne 3 stays interesting for what is more likely to be about 10 hours this time round. This is one of those arguments that no design boy is ever entirely comfortable making, but I find Max Payne 3 fun because I make it fun. It's a weird comparison, but I try to play 3 the same way I try to play Vanquish, by using the shoot, dodge and slow-mo as much as possible instead of using cover. The way you gain slow-mo even kind of encourages this. In the first games you got slow-mo back for killing dudes, but in 3 you also get it back for being shot at, whether you take the hit or not. This means that you actually can run around like a headless chicken, as long as you duck back into cover to replenish your slow-mo from time to time. And did you notice that you don't need any bullet time stored up to do a shoot dodge like you did in the first game? Did you realise time slows further if you reload while in slow-mo? Or that you take far less damage if you're hit while shoot dodging? It's a make your own fun kind of game, and all the mechanics are there for you to do so. Of course, I only stumbled upon this way of playing because I play every shooter like that as much as possible because I'm incredibly impatient. In most games it doesn't work, but Max Payne Return of the King turned out to be the game for me. As such, I can't hold it against you for disliking this game if you played it for the most part like any other third-person shooter. It's certainly the way the game encourages you to play, and I make it harder on myself when I shoot dodge into the middle of a room full of enemies. Although I might survive this time since Max can shoot from lying down. And now, instead of running around in the open, enemies take cover and need to be flanked smartly. Poor bastards thought I was actually using that new cover system and did the same. It's a weird spot for the game to find itself in. It's introduced this new cover system, but since it's kept all the old Max Payne mechanics, it can still kinda be brute force to be played like one of the old games. The only differences being that you have to take a break from time to time, and enemies don't move around as much. Also, you have to make sure you aren't slamming into objects like your favourite male porn star, or you'll end the shoot dodge early, which is a bit of situational awareness the original games didn't require. I have absolutely no idea how intentional my more impatient style of play was, but really all that's happening here is the mechanical integration of the shoot dodge and slow-mo has been repeated in the design with the integration of a cover system. The only difference is cover systems are perceived to be overdone and boring. The original Max Payne's had more fun maybe, but 3 has a technically greater number of options. Sadly, this doesn't really amount to an effectively greater number of options towards the end, where the enemy numbers are greater and they wear body armor and helmets. Having to cap a guy twice in the head before he dies limits the amount of dudes you can expect to kill in a single shoot dodge, and makes resorting to cover usage far more common. Honestly, this would just be fixed by not having the last 3 chapters in the game. It's purely down to the game ramping up the difficulty with a cover-based approach in mind and neglecting my more impatient, experimental style of play. That was barely a page, and I don't know if I want to write a concluding statement yet, so I might just gush about a couple things first. I love the track that plays over the airport terminal gunfight, Tears by Health. It's a banger just as a piece of music, but I love how it kind of sounds like the sounds you might hear in a terminal. I don't know if it was intentional, and I don't know if anyone else will even know what I'm talking about, but to me it sounds like it's being played over an intercom and echoing around the departure lounge, just from the instrumentation. Maybe I'm crazy, but I do love pieces of music that sound like they're made up of sounds you might hear in the environment. Sawmill Thrill from Tropical Freeze is another one. I think the set pieces in Max Payne and The Prisoner of Azkaban are shockingly pretty nice. They all essentially boil down to Max using bullet time and shooting more dudes while also doing something he can't do with the mechanics. I somehow find the small scale of these quite enjoyable. They're short and unassuming enough that they're just little shots of adrenaline here and there. Since the game already has a built-in system for doing flashy cinematic things constantly, a few elongated bullet time sequences in extreme scenarios scattered here and there were a good choice. It allows the game to peak once every couple of missions without those moments being so much better that they make the rest of the game boring by comparison. The game feel in Max Payne and The Last Crusade is also spot on. In fact, gunplay in all of Rockstar's games since Red Dead Redemption has been on fucking point. The tiny aiming dot in the centre of the screen is somehow more satisfying than a big circular reticle, perhaps because it gives the impression of more pinpoint accuracy. And there's a big enough blood spray that the game doesn't need hit markers. Until you kill an enemy and there's a hit marker combined with an almost subconscious strobe effect, which is both informative and satisfying. Props as well to the clever last stand system, where if you have some painkillers left when you should have died, you have a chance to use them if you kill the guy who would have killed you. Also, if you're a psychopath, the blood and gore effects are pretty nice, I guess. This is not, I think, a long video by my standards, and I've managed to talk about 3 whole video games. The Max Payne games I think they need to stand as a damn near perfect example of how to have every element of a game contribute to doing one single thing well. So well that it can carry 3 games and around 25 hours. These games may be simple in terms of how many words I can write about them, but if making games this good was easy, I wouldn't have just sat here and raved about a set of game mechanics which, with a few tweaks, has stood the test of time for 17 years.